Realization hits him immediately. If Kiorn is right, then Turan's bloodline comes from the same great house that once destroyed the lives of the people Kiorn cared about most. That means the blood running through his veins belongs to the same family as the Elder's enemies. For a moment, Turan does not know what to say. He wonders if he should apologize. But then he stops himself. Those events were the actions of relatives he has never even met. People who are basically strangers to him. Before he can sort out his thoughts, Kiorn calls his name and tells him not to make such a troubled face. He says Turan did not take part in that war himself. Turan still feels uneasy, but Kiorn treats the matter with calm honesty. He says this is an adult's problem. And if people keep trying to wash blood away with more blood, then the fighting will never end. That only confuses Turan more. So he asks whether Kiorn does not regret telling him to go down the mountain. After all, if Turan pursues power, then sooner or later he will probably end up joining the Zahar family. Kiorn does not deny it. In fact, he says that with Turan's extraordinary talent, that outcome is very likely. But then he says something even more important. He trusts Turan's character. Turan does not understand what he means by that. So Kiorn explains. He says the proof is simple. Even though revealing himself as a wizard put his secret at risk, Turan still chose to save him. That kindness tells Kiorn everything he needs to know. And because of that, he believes that if someone like Turan joined House Zahar and rose to a high position, then maybe he could prevent another terrible war from happening again. Those words leave a strong impression on Turan. But Kiorn tells him there is no need to think too seriously about it yet. After all, Turan has not even decided whether he wants to join the Zahar family in the first place. After thinking about everything he has heard, Turan finally makes up his mind. He says he wants to try going down the mountain. Kiorn smiles and tells him that he has thought it through well. But Turan is not planning to leave immediately. He says he will go only after Kiorn's injury heals. Kiorn brushes the wound off as nothing more than a scratch, but he is clearly moved by the concern. To him, Turan really is a good person. After that, the two return inside and Kiorn begins properly teaching him about magic. He explains that to use magic, a person absolutely needs mana. That is why mana is often called the key to omnipotence. Turan repeats the phrase, but Kiorn quickly corrects the idea. Mana is not truly an all-powerful force just because people call it that. To use magic properly, a wizard needs mana that matches the spell they want to perform. Turan asks what determines that match. Kiorn says the difficulty of magic is mainly decided by three things: bloodline, affinity, and causality. He starts with bloodline. A person's bloodline is the magical nature they are born with. For example, healing Kiorn's injuries with magic would be difficult for Turan. But for certain bloodlines like the Ravista family from the south, that kind of healing comes naturally, even without much training. That is the power of bloodline. Then Turan asks about the second factor, affinity. Kiorn explains that affinity is like familiarity. It is the natural ease a person has with actions they are used to or especially suited for. Turan quickly catches on and compares it to how he formed a fireball more easily when he treated it like throwing a rock. Kiorn says exactly. If Turan had tried to create plain fire in a more conventional way, he never would have achieved the same speed or destructive force. Then Kiorn moves on to the third and most important factor: causality. He admits that even he does not fully understand it himself. So instead of explaining it in theory, he uses an example. He asks Turan what would happen if he tried to kill someone directly with mana alone. Turan thinks for a moment and says probably nothing much. Maybe some light would flash from his hand, and that would be the end of it. Kiorn says that answer is exactly why causality matters. Then he demonstrates. He pours mana into a cup, causing the liquid inside to bubble and boil in a strange, unstable way. He explains that when there is no proper cause for the result a wizard wants, magic becomes inefficient or distorted. Turan listens carefully and then says he thinks he understands. If he wants to kill someone, then, instead of just spending mana on the vague wish for death, he needs to create an actual cause of death. like making fire and launching it at the target. That is a more natural chain of events. Kiorn is delighted by the answer. He tells Turan that he could have become a scholar instead of a mage. Then Turan asks something else that has bothered him for a long time. He says he can control ordinary animals however he wants. So why are magical beasts so much harder to influence? Kiorn answers simply, because of their mana. The mana inside magical creatures resists that kind of easy control. After hearing all of that, Turan lets out a tired smile and admits that magic really is not simple. Kiorn agrees. Being an excellent wizard is not just about using mana. It is also about understanding the principles behind it. Then Turan remembers something. If his bloodline really is connected to House Zahar, then does that mean the Zahar family also has a special inherited ability? Kiorn says yes. House Zahar is known for stealth and tracking. Then he tells Turan to try it. Turan closes his eyes and focuses. He says he does not want to be seen by others. He wants even his sound and smell to disappear. And in the next moment, he vanishes. Kiorn is stunned. He looks around the room and says that Turan succeeded. He truly cannot see him at all. When Turan reappears, Kiorn admits that it has been a long time since he last saw that ability. And even now, it is still a frightening power. During the war, he says, Arabian knights feared that skill more than anything else. Still, he warns Turan not to get carried away. No matter how powerful it seems, it is not invincible. Then Kiorn says he will teach him a few methods for magical training. Turan asks if it is really all right for him to teach the magic of an enemy family. Kiorn answers without hesitation. Turan saved his life. And more importantly, he already said it before. He trusts Turan's character. Not long after, word spreads through the village that Turan plans to sell his sheep and leave. The village chief is furious. He demands to know who is supposed to do the shepherding from now on, and how Turan could make such a decision without consulting the village first. But Turan is not impressed. He calmly tells them to figure out the shepherding problem themselves. Then he asks why any of it should matter to him when the sheep are his own property. He adds that he is willing to sell them at a fair price. But if the villagers try to cheat him, then he will simply release the sheep and leave. And if that happens, they are free to chase them down themselves. Though they will probably have a very hard time doing it. The village chief immediately understands the situation. Turan is the kind of man who always follows through on his words. There is no benefit in provoking him. So in the end, the chief reluctantly hands over the money and tells him to leave or stay as he pleases. And with that, Turan takes another step toward the world beyond the mountain. As Turan and Kiorn prepare to part ways, Turan remembers something. The villagers still owe Kiorn compensation for everything that happened. So he asks if they should go collect it before leaving. But Kiorn immediately refuses. He says he never intended to receive any payment. After all, he was not the one who actually killed the magical beast. That was Turan. With that settled, the two finally reach the moment where they must separate. Kiorn apologizes for refusing Turan's offer to travel together. He says he has always been more comfortable alone. Turan accepts that without complaint. Then, with complete sincerity, he thanks Kiorn for everything. Kiorn smiles and tells him to take care. Turan answers with a gentle smile of his own. He says he hopes that the next time they meet it will be with smiling faces. Then Kiorn turns and walks away. Turan stands there for a long time, watching the old knight's figure disappear into the distance. And only later does he fully understand why he never liked hearing Kiorn speak to him so formally. Although Turan never lacked love from his mother, there had always been something missing in his heart. Ever since he was a child, a part of him had quietly longed for a father figure, someone he could admire, someone who could show him what kind of man he should become. That is why Kiorn's departure leaves such a strong impression on him. Not long after, the story shifts. Turan has now left the mountain and begun his journey into the outside world. He travels through a dry wasteland, walking alone beneath the open sky. At some point, he notices a group of hooded travelers in the distance. From the way they move with a cart, he assumes they must be merchants traveling between settlements. That makes him feel relieved. He decides to ask them for directions. So Turan approaches and politely asks where the nearest city is. The leader of the group answers that if he follows the road they came from, he will eventually reach a city called Murray. Turan thanks them and prepares to leave. But just as he turns away, one of the men stops him. The stranger questions whether Turan really plans to leave after simply taking the information he wanted. Turan asks what he means. The answer is simple. If you receive something, then you should give something in return. That is when the truth becomes obvious. The men around him slowly draw their swords. They order him to take off his bulging bag and hand over his cloak. Turan calmly asks if they are bandits. The leader does not even bother denying it. Instead, he says they should call it recklessness. This is a wasteland after all, a place where no one would think twice if someone died and vanished. To make things easier, the bandit tells Turan to strip off his belongings himself, while they are still being nice about it. He even says killing him and stripping the body afterward would be too bloody and too much work. Turan listens quietly. Then he says something cold. He understands now. These are bandits who kill people without hesitation. And the moment he says that, his thoughts flash back to Kiorn's lessons. The moment he talks about mana, the moment he talks about magic, the moment he talks about causality and control, all of it comes together in his mind at once. Then Turan smiles, and with complete confidence, he says he will use these men for practice. That single line changes everything. Because in that moment, the bandits still think they have cornered a lone traveler. But they have no idea they are standing in front of a hidden wizard. Men laugh at him and say this lunatic is talking as if he were some kind of wizard. But Turan calmly raises a hand and speaks a single word. Wind. In the next instant, a violent blast erupts around him and throws the bandits off their feet. They scream in confusion as the sudden force tears through the group. Turan immediately notices something interesting. Instead of trying to generate wind from nothing, shaping it with his hand and amplifying it uses far less mana than he expected. That realization catches even him off guard. He did not know he could whip up wind this strong with so little power. While the surviving bandits struggle to understand what just happened, Turan moves on to another test. He takes a bit of water and compresses it into sharp, floating projectiles. The moment the spell is ready, he fires. One of the bandits is pierced before he can even react. Turan watches the attack land and calmly evaluates the result. Even so, he admits that simply throwing stones still feels faster and stronger. At that point, the bandits panic completely. They drop to the ground and beg for forgiveness. They say they had no idea he was a wizard. They promise to give him anything he wants. They beg him to spare their lives. But Turan keeps walking forward. Then, in a single brutal moment, the rest of the bandits are cut down as well. The leader stares in horror. Impossible. They are all dead. Now completely broken, the last surviving bandit agrees to answer anything. So Turan asks him one simple question. Why did they attack him without any kind of plan? If he was a traveler walking alone, then there was always a chance he could be a wizard. The answer surprises him. The bandit says it was because Turan bowed his head. Even after they spoke rudely, he still greeted them politely. So they assumed he was just an ordinary person. Turan pauses for a moment. Then he thanks the man. That one mistake taught him something useful about the outside world. The bandit, thinking he might actually be spared, desperately asks if Turan will let him live. But in that instant, Turan remembers Kiorn's warning. From now on, he will meet many kinds of people, and among them, the worst are bandits who hurt others for profit. Kiorn had told him never to show mercy to scum like that, because a life spared out of pity today could lead to the deaths of many innocent people tomorrow. Now Turan understands exactly what he meant. So he kills the last bandit too. Afterward, silence falls over the desert. Turan looks at the bodies and realizes something that weighs heavily on him. He killed people. The thought disturbs him. He does feel guilt. But he also knows he could not just let them go. People like that would only rob and kill again the moment another victim appeared. After standing there for a while, Turan decides he has already stalled long enough. Then he notices the cart tracks the fake merchants left behind. The clear wheel marks cutting across the sand give him a direction to follow. As he walks on, one thought burns sharply in his mind. He killed people. And yet, as he keeps moving forward, that storm inside him slowly begins to settle. Like tracks in the desert fading beneath time, the chaos in his heart softens as Kiorn's teachings return to him. Eventually, Turan reaches a rise and sees something in the distance. A city. For the first time, he looks out at the outside world properly and realizes he has truly arrived somewhere new. He stares in awe and quietly says that this must be the place. Small city Moray. When he enters, everything feels unfamiliar. Crowds fill the streets. People move in every direction. Even the buildings look completely different from the quiet village he came from. For the first time, Turan truly feels that he has entered a city. Trying to get his bearings, he approaches a fruit seller and politely asks for directions. But the man snaps at him and tells him to get lost if he is not buying anything. Turan is confused. Why is he being so rude? He starts wondering if this is some kind of unspoken city rule. Maybe people here expect you to buy something before asking questions. So he asks how much the fruit costs. The merchant says, 2 dupit. Turan repeats the unfamiliar word, clearly not knowing the currency. The seller notices right away that he is an outsider and says paying with other coins is fine too. After paying, Turan finally asks where he can find an inn. The merchant tells him to go straight down the road behind the cape shop, then turn left. There he will see the biggest inn in the city, a place with a blue roof. Turan follows the directions and arrives at the inn. As soon as he enters, a cheerful blonde staff member welcomes him. Her name is Lena. She immediately calls him a handsome guest. Turan gets straight to the point and asks how much a room for one night costs. Lena answers that it is 16 dupit. Turan says he will stay. But more importantly, he has something he wants to ask. He wants to know whether there is a nearby monster with a bounty on it. Lena pauses at the strange question. Meanwhile, Turan thinks back to Kiorn's advice. He needs to kill monsters and absorb their mana. And if possible, hunting monsters could also earn him money. When Lena hesitates, Turan asks why she is not answering. Then she smiles and says something that surprises him even more. There is no such thing as free information in this world. She tells him that questions like that should be asked at City Hall. Turan, who has never heard of such a place, asks what City Hall even is. That makes Lena realize just how much of a countryside boy he really is. So she explains. City halls are where public affairs are handled. The officials who work there are employed by the city's lord. And that is where someone would go to ask about things like monster bounties. For Turan, this is yet another sign that the world beyond the mountain is bigger and more complicated than he ever imagined. After Lena explains what City Hall is, she adds that it is probably already closed for the day. The sun has already gone down, so if Turan wants information about monster bounties, he will have to go there tomorrow. Then she asks him another question. Is he a monster hunter too? Turan has never even heard the term before, so he asks what that means. Lena explains that some people believe if an ordinary person hunts enough monsters, they can become a wizard. To her, it is nothing more than superstition. Anyone who believes that sounds like an idiot. But before the conversation can end, someone suddenly cuts in. A man named Meden steps forward and says it is not superstition at all. According to him, it is a real fact that a person can become a wizard by killing monsters. He claims he has seen it with his own eyes. Lena is shocked to see him and blurts out that she thought he was dead. But Meden just laughs it off. He says he has no intention of dying before he becomes a wizard. That immediately catches Turan's attention. He turns toward Madan and asks him to explain the part about becoming a wizard by killing monsters. Madan says the idea is simple. Wizards become stronger when they hunt monsters. So by the same principle, an ordinary person who kills monsters should be able to awaken as a wizard too. He proudly says that the four of them are hunting monsters for exactly that reason. The other men behind him immediately agree. Turan listens carefully, then asks the obvious question. If that idea is true, then does that mean one of them has already become a wizard? Maidan shakes his head. He says that in this city there are only 4 confirmed wizards. The Lord's wizard and 3 others who serve under him. Then he notices something about Turan. He says that if Turan also hunts monsters, then for a man who plans to fight, he looks strangely unprepared. So he asks whether Turan even has a weapon. Turan says that he does. Then he pulls out his sling. Maidan studies it and immediately notices that it has been used a lot. Turan explains that it is good for firing objects about the size of an egg very quickly. After hearing that, Maidan nods and says a sling like that would be useful for hunting small monsters like rabbit or fox types. Then he brings up an offer. Their group has already been saying they could use 1 more ranged fighter. So he asks Turan if he has any interest in hunting together with them. But Turan declines right away. He says no thank you. Later that night, Turan lies alone on the bed in his room and thinks back on everything that happened. What a chaotic day. He still cannot quite believe that he really left the village. He looks at his bag, then wonders what is going to happen to him from here on. At the same time, his hand quietly crackles with mana. Then he hears a knock. Turan immediately becomes alert. Even in an inn, he knows he cannot let his guard down. Kiorn's warning comes back to him again. A city is not automatically safe. Never let your guard down. So Turan gathers mana in his hand, rises from the bed, and carefully opens the door. At first, he only peeks through the gap. Then he freezes. Standing outside is Lena. She smiles and asks if he was asleep. Then she says she thought the room might be cold, so she came to keep him warm. Turan stares at her in confusion and asks what she means by that. And at that moment, the meaning behind Lena's late-night visit becomes very clear. When Turan asks Lena what she means, she makes it painfully clear. For a small amount of money, she is willing to do whatever he wants. At first, Turan does not even know how to react. He asks what happens if there is nothing he wants. But Lena confidently tells him not to lie. She says she can tell just by looking at his face. Then she moves closer, clearly expecting him to give in. But instead of temptation, Turan's mind flashes back to Kiorn's warning. Be careful with inmaids and prostitutes. Many of them carry diseases. Wizards may have strong resistance, but carelessness can still bring danger. And if a disease is passed on later, it could harm other people too. Do not let desire trap you into doing something you will regret. The warning hits him so hard that Turan immediately shuts everything down. Lena freezes. Then, realizing she has been rejected, she storms off in frustration. After she leaves, Turan lies back on the bed and thinks about the city. The fruit seller charged him just to answer a question. Now, Lena tried to put a price on warmth and conversation too. To Turan, it all feels cold. Cities really are hard places to live in. But downstairs, another conversation catches his attention. He hears Maidan and his companions talking. One of the men asks why Maidan tried to bring that strange traveler along earlier. To him, Turan looked like he would be more trouble than help. Mighty answers honestly. Turan reminds him of himself when he was younger. Hearing that Turan hunts with a sling made him worry. If the boy stayed close to him, then maybe he would survive a little longer. That answer catches Turan off guard. For the first time since arriving in the city, he realizes not everyone here is cold-hearted after all. The next morning, Turan heads to City Hall. A clerk greets him and asks how he can help. Turan bluntly asks whether the man is an official. The clerk looks annoyed and asks what else he would be. Then Turan gets to the point. He says he came to hunt monsters. The scene briefly cuts back to one of Kieran's old warnings. The world will not be kind to you. If Turan wants ordinary people to treat him kindly, the easiest way is simply to reveal that he is a wizard. The moment he does that, people will bow their heads. But Turan has no intention of using that shortcut. Instead, he takes the monster request sheet and reads it. The target is a crow-type monster. The clerk tells him he is not allowed to take the paper with him, so he should look at it and hand it back. Turan studies the drawing and confirms that it is a crow monster. The official responds sarcastically, asking if it looks like a cat to him. Then he gives an important warning. If Turan kills the monster, he has to bring the corpse back into the city. If a wizard fails to disperse the mana from a dead monster, it becomes a wraith. And under city law, leaving a monster corpse behind can even be punished by execution. Turan quietly says he already knows that. He knows exactly what happens when a monster becomes a wraith, and he has no intention of making the same mistake twice. Then he asks another question. Why do knights not hunt monsters themselves? The clerk answers with open contempt. Knights are responsible for keeping order inside the city. Hunting monsters outside the walls is work for thugs like him. With that, Turan leaves. The clerk watches him go and mutters that another corpse is probably about to pile up outside the city. But not long after, everything changes. A dead crow monster suddenly lands on the floor in front of them. The officials stare in disbelief. The corpse has been brought back already. And not only that, it is in excellent condition. When they realize Turan is the one who returned it, they can barely believe it. They ask if he really killed it alone. Turan calmly says yes. Then he asks how to receive the bounty. The officials scramble to respond and quickly hand over the money. They even tell him to rest well since he must have worked hard. But while they inspect the corpse, they are even more shocked. The blade wings are still intact. Bringing back a blade crow in that condition should have been nearly impossible. Then they notice Turan is still standing there. So one of them asks why he has not left yet. Turan calmly asks if there are any other monsters worth hunting. That question leaves them speechless. The story then jumps forward. In just 3 days, Turan defeats 30 monsters. Back at the inn, Lena proudly lays out a huge meal for him and says she never imagined someone like him could hunt that many so quickly. She laughs and says he must have made a lot of money. But Turan quietly answers that money is not his only goal. What matters more is the monsters, mana. And thanks to all those hunts, he definitely became stronger. He can feel it clearly. Compared to when he first met Kieran, his mana has already increased several times over. Even so, he can also feel a limit approaching. If he keeps hunting only weak monsters, it may become harder and harder to grow stronger. Then Lena suddenly asks something strange. Did he steal a bite of the food before it reached the table? Turan stares at her, confused. Then someone else points out the obvious. He ate it all by himself. Even though he looks skinny, he can really eat. The chef appears and says it was the first time in a while that he had cooked with that much effort, so he is glad Turan enjoyed it. Turan sincerely tells him the food was delicious. But the peaceful moment does not last. Suddenly, Medan's group barges in. One of the men mocks Turan for eating something tasty all by himself. Another calls him a skinny runt and says he heard Turan has been making a lot of money lately. Then he smirks and asks, how about giving some charity to his partners? Turan's answer is instant. He slaps the man so hard that everyone freezes. Then, with complete calm, he asks if that is not what the man wanted. Charity. The moment the fight starts, Turan completely overwhelms them. One man rushes in and tries to attack him head-on. Turan catches the blow with ease and slams him down without any hesitation. Another comes at him from the side, but Turan knocks him away just as easily. The gap in skill is obvious. These men are not even close to being on his level. Lena panics and yells at them not to fight inside the inn. That is when Medan finally steps in. He forces his men to stop, bows his head, and sincerely apologizes. He says he already gave them a proper scolding and promises this will never happen again. Then Midan explains what happened. Their group has been short on money lately. Seeing Turan earn so much so quickly made his men jealous. He orders the two troublemakers to apologize as well, and they reluctantly do. Turan asks if things are really that difficult for them. Midan admits that they are. In fact, within about 3 days, they may not even be able to afford their room anymore. But even then, he says that is their own problem to deal with. Turan listens quietly. Then he suddenly holds out some money. Midan is stunned and asks why. Turan tells him this is repayment for the kindness Midan showed earlier when he worried about him and even offered to bring him along. That catches Midan completely off guard. He asks how Turan even knew that. Turan does not answer directly. Instead, he repeats something he learned very quickly after coming to the city. There is no such thing as free. If Midan wants the money, then Turan wants something in return. Information. Midan lights up immediately and says that is exactly what he is best at. He promises to tell Turan everything he knows. Sometime later, Turan thinks over everything Midan told him. This might be his last hunt in this city. Midan already gave him useful information about the next place he should go, so it is probably time for him to move on. And the more Turan reflects on it, the more he realizes that Midan really is a good person. He is not like Kiorn. Kiorn felt seasoned, calm, and wise. Midan feels rougher, but also simpler and kinder in his own way. Then Turan suddenly catches a smell in the air. Blood. His expression hardens instantly. He takes off at full speed, praying that his guess is wrong. Soon he finds claw marks carved into a tree. And moments later he discovers a body. A man from Midan's group has been brutally killed. Turan stares for a second, then realizes who it is. This person was one of Midan's companions. A chill runs through him. Then he sees even more blood. And what he finds next makes his heart sink even further. Something terrible has happened to Midan. Turan kneels beside Midan's body and tries to understand what happened. The scene is horrific. Bodies are scattered across the ground, torn apart by something savage. One of the dying men barely manages to speak. With blood all over his face, he whispers a single word. Rabbit? At first, Turan cannot believe it. A rabbit? But then he looks ahead and sees the truth for himself. Standing in the middle of the path is a monster. It looks like a giant white rabbit, but its red eyes are filled with bloodlust and its long ears are sharp like blades. The moment Turan sees it, he understands. This is no ordinary beast. It is a monster. And before he can react any further, the creature suddenly launches itself at him with unbelievable speed. Turan barely dodges in time. The attack tears through the air where his body had been a second earlier. He grits his teeth and realizes just how close that was. It is fast. Far faster than he expected. Turan immediately counters. He swings his sling and launches a burst of blue projectiles toward the rabbit. The attack races forward with tremendous speed, but the monster reacts instantly. It twists and cuts through the attack midair. Watching that, Turan quickly understands something important. This creature has techniques specifically meant to deal with thrown weapons. That makes it a terrible matchup for him. But there is no time to hesitate. The rabbit monster charges again, vanishes from sight for an instant, and then appears in another angle of attack. Its movement is so sharp and unpredictable that Turan nearly loses track of it completely. The fight turns into a blur of speed. Turan keeps dodging at the last possible moment while searching for an opening. He counters at close range and drives the fight into a violent exchange of movement and force. The rabbit screeches and darts away, then rushes in again. Its attacks are relentless, cutting through trees and kicking up clouds of dust. The whole forest starts to look like it is being shredded around them. Still, Turan refuses to lose control. He keeps following the rhythm of the monster's movements, reading its patterns and adjusting little by little. Eventually, he lands a real hit. Blood spills from the rabbit monster. The wound is not fatal, but it is enough to shift the battle. The monster begins to slow. Its breathing grows rougher. Its movements lose some of their earlier sharpness. Turan keeps the pressure on. He pushes forward, forcing the wounded beast to keep moving until it can no longer maintain that insane speed. And at last, the rabbit collapses. The fight is over. For a moment, the forest becomes quiet again. Then Turan raises his hand and begins absorbing the mana from the corpse. Immediately, he notices something strange. The amount of mana flowing into him is completely different from before. This is far more than the leopard monster from the beginning. The rabbit monster is on another level entirely. While Turan is still processing that, one of the dying men speaks again. With his last strength, he looks at Turan and realizes the truth. Turan is a wizard. Turan quietly confirms it. Then, instead of asking about the fight, he asks something more human. Does anyone in Midden's group have family he should deliver their belongings to? The answer is no. There is no one. Then, with death already closing in, the man tells Turan one final thing. There is a great city nearby called Orem, and inside that city is a place called a library. The word immediately catches Turan's attention. A library. According to the dying man, it contains thousands of books. But there is a problem. Not just anyone can enter. Apparently only wizards are allowed inside. The moment Turan hears that, his mind is made up. He decides right then that his next destination will be the great city of Orem. Afterward, Turan thinks of Medan. Quietly, he says he hopes Medan is happy wherever he ended up. Then the story shifts. At first, Turan had been impressed by the small city of Murray. But when he finally reaches the next destination, he realizes just how small that first city really was. Before him stands the great city of Orem. The place is massive. Crowds of people are lined up just to enter. Turan is genuinely stunned by how many people are trying to get inside. He wonders if the guards are screening for wanted criminals. Then he sees the city gates, the armed guards, and the organized entry process. As expected of a great city, the place has a much more established system. Turan quietly takes it all in. But just as he gets close enough to enter, a guard suddenly stops him. The reason is embarrassingly simple. The guard says he has never seen clothes that filthy before, and tells Turan to go wash himself first. Turan can only stand there in silence. After everything he went through, being stopped at the gate because of dirt is not exactly what he expected. Still, before dealing with that, something else catches his eye. A massive tower rises over the city. The moment Turan sees it, he realizes this must be the library Maidan told him about. Just looking at it leaves him overwhelmed. To him, the structure is so enormous and so strange that it almost feels like it must have been built with magic itself. With that thought in mind, he heads straight for it. When he arrives, 2 guards are standing watch at the entrance. Turan politely says he is trying to enter. The men explain that this library is a place only wizards are allowed to access. So Turan answers plainly. He says he is a wizard. The reaction is immediate. One of the guards explodes in anger and accuses him of trying to impersonate a wizard. He even warns Turan that pretending to be one could get him killed. Then the man tries to prove him wrong by activating his own mana. At that moment, Turan remembers Kiorn's words. Wizards can recognize each other. By sensing another person's mana, they can even tell whether that person is stronger than they are. A second later, the guard learns that lesson for himself. The instant he reads Turan's power, his face changes. The sheer difference crushes him. He staggers, chokes, and collapses to the ground. The other guard rushes over in panic, asking if he is all right. But the fallen man already understands the truth. The person standing before them is no ordinary wizard. At minimum, he must be noble class or even higher. Realizing he almost insulted someone far above him, the guard quickly changes his tone. He introduces himself as Kenya, a knight of House Valtes, and asks Turan which house he belongs to. Turan calmly asks whether he really has to answer that just to enter. Kenya says no, but to use the library he still needs permission from the master of House Valtes. So first, they must contact the house. Turan lets out a quiet sigh. He thought this would be simple. Instead, he suddenly finds himself being treated like an honored guest. Before he knows it, he is brought into a luxurious bath and attended by maids. Turan is completely confused by how things escalated so quickly. He tells them to stop and says he can wash himself. But the maids immediately panic. If they fail to attend to an esteemed guest properly, they will be punished. Turan stares at them for a moment, then gives up and tells them to do whatever they want. After that, he is washed, dressed, and prepared in a way he never imagined. When the maids see the finished result, they are stunned. One of them blurts out that it is amazing. Turan, now dressed properly, asks if there is something on his face. The maids become flustered and quickly apologize. One of them even admits that she momentarily lost herself because of his beauty. Turan awkwardly tells her there is nothing to forgive, but then she asks him not to speak so casually. By now, the whole situation feels bizarre to him. And before he can make sense of it, someone new enters the room. A young woman with bright red hair steps forward and looks him over with interest. She immediately says he must be the guest who showed up looking like a beggar. But after being washed and dressed properly, he now looks like a prince. Turan awkwardly protests and introduces himself. The young woman gives her name in return, Azella. Then she asks which house he belongs to. Turan says that for personal reasons it is difficult for him to say. Azella smiles at that answer, but inwardly she becomes curious. If he is hiding his identity, then perhaps he is worth testing. So she decides to play a little prank. In the next instant, a powerful burst of fiery mana erupts around her. Then she gives him a direct challenge. Show me your mana. And with that demand hanging in the air, Turan is suddenly forced into another dangerous test. When Azella demands to see his mana, Turan has no choice but to respond. In the next instant, his blue mana erupts outward and crashes against Azella's blazing orange power. The two forces collide so violently that the room trembles. Even the attendants nearby scream and throw themselves back in fear. For a brief moment, the entire space is swallowed by the clash between blue and orange light. Then, just as suddenly, it ends. Turan exhales and lowers his power. Azella, on the other hand, looks thrilled. She stares at him with shining eyes and laughs like she has just found something fascinating. Then she says something so absurd that Turan can only freeze. She asks if he wants to marry her. Turan just stands there in stunned silence, completely unable to process what he just heard. Azella immediately bursts out laughing and says it was only a joke. But before leaving, she tells him to think about it at least once. After all, the seat next to her is still empty. When she walks away, Turan is left standing there alone, trying to figure out what just happened. At the same time, he notices something else. His hand is trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from realization. Azella's mana is at least on the same level as his. That thought unsettles him. If that is normal for the people in a great city, then the outside world may be even more dangerous than he expected. Soon after, Turan is finally brought before the ruler of the city. The man introduces himself as Rug Valtes, Lord of Aurum. Turan calmly introduces himself in return. Then Rug gets straight to the point. He asks if Turan wants to use the library. Before Turan can answer much, Rug explains something important first. Many people come to Aurum after hearing strange rumors. They believe the library contains some amazing ancient magic, some secret method, or some hidden shortcut that can drastically increase their mana. But according to Rug, that is nonsense. There is no miracle hidden there. No forbidden art. No ancient treasure that will suddenly make someone stronger. Turan answers honestly. That is fine with him. He never came looking for something like that in the first place. Rug seems pleased by that response. He says that if Turan still wants to use the library, then he will not stop him. There is nothing inside that counts as confidential information for House Valtas anyway. However, by the time their meeting ends, it is already late in the day. So Rug tells him to rest and come back tomorrow. Turan thanks him sincerely and says he will not forget the kindness. The next day, the guards at the library entrance bow their heads and inform him that his entry has been approved. Then they open the doors and formally welcome him to the Sky Library. The moment Turan steps inside, he is struck silent. A massive spiral staircase twists upward toward a bright opening far above. Shelves of books rise all around him. Tables, chairs, and more books stretch across the interior. The scale of the place completely overwhelms him. So this is the library. Then a voice suddenly calls out to him. A small girl in white appears and cheerfully introduces herself as the librarian. She says that by order of the Lord she will explain the rules for using the place. Turan stares at her in disbelief. A little kid is the librarian? But the girl speaks confidently and explains the rules anyway. First, if he damages anything, he must compensate for it. Second, he is not allowed to take any books outside. And while he is using the library, she will be watching him the entire time. That last part makes Turan visibly uncomfortable. He awkwardly asks whether she could stand a little farther away while he reads. Then he asks if she has also read the books here. The girl says yes, and adds that if he needs help finding something, that is exactly what she is best at. Then she asks what kind of books he wants. Romance, history, or, since he is young, maybe something erotic. Turan goes silent for a second. Then he finally answers that what he wants most is something very basic. He wants to learn common sense about the world. That answer seems to surprise even her. Still, she quickly begins gathering books for him. She explains that many of the books in the library are hundreds of years old and may not suit his level, but there is a section that should help. She piles several books in front of him and says this part may be useful. Turan thanks her and picks one up. For a moment, he simply holds it in his hands. So this is what a book is. Then he opens it. And the instant he begins reading, he is amazed. From that point on, Turan begins returning to the library every day. He reads constantly. And with every page, the world he never knew starts opening up to him. He learns about geography, different races, the etiquette of wizards, how items are manufactured and processed, and even monsters and relics from the era of the Old Empire. The more knowledge he gathers, the more vivid the world becomes in his mind. What had once been nothing but a vast unknown begins taking shape. One day, Rug Valtas looks at him and remarks that Turan has been making excellent use of the library. Turan answers yes. Then Rug reminds him of something important. Allowing him to use the library is not a right. It is an act of goodwill, separate from the way he is being treated as a noble guest. And now, Rug says, he would like payment for that goodwill. When Turan asks what he wants, Rug finally reveals the problem. A monster has appeared north of Orem, and it has been attacking travelers. After Lord Rug reveals the problem, Turan asks the obvious question. Does he want him to hunt the monster? Rug explains the situation in full. 4 knights were already sent to subjugate it, but none of them returned. They were eaten. That means the problem has already gone beyond ordinary knights. A noble will have to step in personally. But House Valtas can only mobilize 2 people at the moment. So Rug asks Turan to name his price. Turan answers without hesitation. Very well. Protecting people is what a wizard ought to do. Even so, something about the situation still feels strange to him. He remembers how dismissive ordinary officials were when he first arrived. Wizards never seemed like the type who would involve themselves in work like this. Rug then explains the reason. The northern road that has been blocked is one of Orem's most important trade routes, and it has already been closed for 10 days. They need it reopened as quickly as possible. The moment Turan hears that, he finally understands. The monster appeared before he ever arrived in Orem. That means Rug did not welcome him into the library purely out of kindness. He welcomed him because he already intended to ask for help. Soon after, Turan heads out with the subjugation party. As they leave the city, he notices one more thing. Azella is coming too. She stretches lazily and complains that their father is really making a huge fuss by even mobilizing a guest for a monster hunt. A young man beside her lightly scolds her for calling the Lord fussy. She immediately tells him to drop it. Then the same young man turns to Turan and politely introduces himself. His name is Marvin Valtas. He says this is their first proper meeting and that he looks forward to working together. Turan answers in kind. As they continue deeper into the forest, Marvin suddenly asks something strange. Is Turan interested in his big sister by any chance? Turan immediately answers no. Marvin smiles and says that is a relief. But before the conversation can continue, voices ring out ahead. Stop. The group finds the wreckage of a destroyed carriage. The signs of battle are everywhere. One of the knights says this must be the place where the creature attacked. Since the northern route was forbidden, the victims likely came from the southern side and crossed into danger anyway. Turan studies the scene quietly. Then his eyes stop on something important. A handprint. He looks at it carefully and says something that surprises everyone. It is a monkey. Azella looks confused and asks what he means. Turan points at the handprint and explains that it resembles a monkey's hand. From the way the debris is scattered, he believes the monster attacked the carriage and then returned into the forest. If they find the trail and follow it, they should be able to locate the creature. Azella admits that her tracking magic is not suited for something like this. She asks Marvin if he can do it, but he says he cannot either. Then Turan says he will try looking. Azella immediately wonders if he comes from that bloodline. Turan calmly brushes the question aside and says he just uses this method often, so he is used to it. Then he closes his eyes and focuses. Search. In that instant, his senses spread outward, and soon he points in one direction. This way. The group follows him until they reach a river. There, the trail abruptly ends. Turan studies the water and makes another deduction. It looks like the monster washed his body. Azella cannot believe what she is hearing. A mere beast washed itself to avoid being tracked? But Turan quietly answers that maybe it simply washed itself because it wanted to. Then, in the very next moment, his expression changes. He senses something, and he shouts a warning. Behind you. A monstrous ape bursts from the forest in a violent ambush. It roars with glowing eyes and a savage body covered in dark power. Everyone turns too late. The monster crashes into the formation with overwhelming force. The knights scream for everyone to dodge, but it is already too late for many of them. Bodies are torn apart in an instant. Blood splashes across the battlefield. The attack is so brutal and sudden that the entire formation is thrown into chaos immediately. Turan watches it unfold with cold clarity. And in that instant, one terrible thought comes back to him. His mother was right. The knights of noble houses really are treated like expendable tools. Azella regains her composure almost instantly and gives a single command. Attack. The surviving knights rush the ape monster from every direction. For the first time, the creature hesitates. Then it suddenly turns and runs. As the ape tries to escape, everyone realizes the same thing at once. They are about to lose it. The monster is simply too fast. Even with the knights and wizards chasing after it, the gap keeps widening. That is when Turan steps in. He hardens a stone with mana and launches it with overwhelming speed. The projectile releases a massive blue spell that tears straight toward the fleeing monster. The attack lands before the ape can get away. In the next instant, the monster is pierced clean through. Blood explodes everywhere as the beam rips through its body. The ape lets out a horrifying scream and crashes to the ground under the force of Turan's attack. With a single spell, Turan completely changes the battle. Only moments earlier, the ape had torn through trained knights and thrown the battlefield into chaos. But now Turan's magic stops it in one decisive strike. To everyone watching, the sight is both shocking and reassuring. The beast that had massacred armed fighters is now pinned down, screaming in agony. But the battle still is not over. Even after taking Turan's attack, the ape monster is still alive. Azella and Marvin watch closely, expecting it to finally drop. It does not. Seeing that, Azella raises her hand again and shouts for it to die. A spiral of fire crashes down onto the monster and erupts in a massive explosion. Flames swallow the area so completely that, from the outside, it looks like the final blow. At that moment, Turan finally understands the bloodline ability of House Voltas. They are pyromaniacs. This is no ordinary fire magic. It is a bloodline skill inherited from noble lineage. After the ape monster falls, the dust slowly settles. For a brief moment, everyone thinks the battle is finally over. Azella even jokes that she almost got chills when Turan's rock came flying in. Marvin teases her right away and asks if she was scared. She quickly snaps back, saying he was the one screaming like a little girl. Their usual arguing returns almost at once, even while the pain of the battle is still fresh. Azella mutters that her arm might be broken, while the others rush to check the wounded. The tension begins to ease. For the first time since the monster appeared, it feels like they may have actually survived. But the truth soon becomes clear. What should have been a clean victory has left the entire group battered and shaken. The knights are badly injured, the battlefield is a mess, and everyone understands how close they came to disaster. Looking at the aftermath, Turan quietly realizes that this should never have become such a disaster. Yes, the monster's attack was sudden, but if the group had fought with better judgment, the injuries should never have become this severe. As the tension starts to settle, Turan notices something else. Even though knights are supposed to be much stronger than ordinary people, these men threw themselves in front of weaker allies without hesitation. Marvin notices Turan looking at them and asks, "What is it?" Turan only shakes his head. No, it's nothing. He chooses not to say what is on his mind. Instead, he changes the subject and tells everyone to absorb the monster's mana before it fades. So the group gathers around the corpse and begins drawing in the remaining power. Just like the book said, several people can absorb mana at the same time without weakening the effect. Azula and Marvin quickly reach their limits. Turan does not. He keeps absorbing. His mana capacity is clearly on a completely different level. Watching him, the others finally understand why Lord Voltas insisted on sending him along. Turan's spell control is exceptional. And even though he has not yet reached his growth limit, his mana pool already rivals theirs. As the group heads back toward the city at sunset, Marvin openly praises Turan. He says they never would have defeated the monster without him. Turan brushes it off. He says his contribution was nothing special. If anything, he regrets not noticing the monster's abilities sooner. That makes Marvin curious. Turan explains that monsters can awaken different powers depending on their traits. From the ape's giant hands and strange eyes, he guessed it had abilities linked to throwing objects and seeing far distances through the forest. Marvin is amazed that Turan figured all of that out so quickly. Turan casually says he only knew because he had recently read a monster encyclopedia in the library. Marvin laughs and says nobody really goes to that stuffy place. He admits he once tried reading there, but the books were so difficult that he gave up almost immediately. Turan tells him that next time he should just ask the librarian for easier books. Marvin looks confused and asks, "The librarian?" That is when Turan suddenly realizes something embarrassing. He had completely forgotten how strange that little librarian girl actually was. And before he can think any further, the scene shifts back to the Sky Library. The librarian warmly welcomes him again. Turan immediately realizes he has been careless. No commoner or knight would casually call a noble by name, and yet she did it without hesitation. When he asks how she knows his name, she calmly tells him she learned it from his permit. Then she reveals something even stranger. As long as it is inside the library, her gaze can reach anywhere. Books begin floating around her as if the entire library is part of her body. Turan asks how he should address her. She says she does not really have a name and tells him to call her whatever he wants. When she jokingly suggests something cute, Turan refuses and simply decides to call her librarian. She complains that he is too stiff and says it feels awkward when he suddenly becomes polite after ordering her around for days. At that moment, it becomes even clearer that this mysterious girl is far more unusual than she looks. Turan quickly denies ever ordering the librarian around. Then he tells her not to come so close because it feels burdensome. The strange girl just floats higher into the air and calmly answers his earlier question. She says she is not a wizard from the old empire. In fact, she was never a person at all. She explains that she is a spirit. More specifically, she says the library itself is her true body. The human shape he sees is only a convenient form for communication. To put it simply, the entire Sky Library is alive through her. Turan thinks she is making things up, so he reaches out and touches her. His hand passes through her strangely, almost like touching a reflection in water. That proves she really is something unnatural. The librarian admits she cannot directly attack intruders. If she could, she says she would have punished every fool who stole books from this place. Turan then remarks that House Valtis seems to know she exists. She explains that only people with the right qualifications can perceive her. Until now, nobody using the library had the proper type to see her. According to her, only those whose bloodline has reached a certain level can notice her presence. That makes Turan immediately curious. He asks what she means by type. She answers that it is what wizards call bloodline. Turan then asks if she can tell him about his own bloodline. At first, she tells him to ask his parents. But when Turan reveals that he is an orphan, her attitude changes. She says she can check it herself. All she needs is his consent to examine his body. Turan is understandably alarmed by the way she says it. But the process itself does not hurt. Once she examines him, she announces an important truth. His bloodline is mixed. That means he was born from two different bloodlines. She says the biggest parts are the pursuer bloodline and the hunter bloodline. Turan immediately recognizes one of them. The hunter trait belongs to House Zahar, but the librarian finds one more detail. There is another bloodline hidden inside him. It is locked. She cannot identify it yet because it has not awakened. She explains that locked bloodlines are not that rare in mixed lineages. As he grows stronger, the sealed part may naturally open. That revelation shakes Turan deeply. He begins thinking about his mother. She had always been far too refined and educated to seem like a common villager. Maybe she had noble blood after all. Maybe her bloodline had simply become so diluted that it could no longer support great mana. Even so, Turan now understands that his origins were more complicated than he ever imagined. After that, he thanks the librarian and continues learning beside her. From then on, he does not read alone anymore. Instead, he constantly asks questions and listens to her explanations. She knows not only the books inside the library, but also knowledge that vanished from history long ago. Step by step, she explains the world in plain language. She shows him how invisible substances exist in the air and water. She teaches him that disease is caused by tiny living organisms. She explains decay, healing, heat, friction, and the bending of light. For Turan, this knowledge is priceless. He realizes that most magic is not impossible. People simply do not understand the principles behind it. And once those principles become clear, the same spells can be cast with far less mana. That insight changes everything for him. By changing the way he understands the world, his skill as a wizard rises dramatically. Turan begins to suspect that powerful houses may be hoarding this kind of knowledge on purpose. If every wizard knew these principles, noble families would lose their advantage. Even the librarian quietly admits she now understands why people's knowledge keeps declining with time. Eventually, Turan decides it is time to leave. House Voltas has already begun openly pushing him toward the road. The librarian panics and begs him to take her along. Turan asks if she can even leave the library. She says no. She cannot leave this place at all. Even so, she stubbornly tells him to stay forever and promises she will take good care of him. Turan refuses. Then the librarian gives him one final piece of advice. She tells him that this land still carries much of the gods' legacy. He should travel, look around, and perhaps he may meet another spirit one day. Turan promises that he will visit her from time to time. The librarian tries to act indifferent, but she is clearly upset about his departure. Turan smiles and reassures her. There are still too many books he has not read yet, so he will definitely come back. Outside, with the map of the continent in mind, Turan chooses his next destination. House Zahar's base lies east of Orem, in the Urnil Desert. That is where he will go next. Not only to seek House Zahar, but also to search for clues about his parents. Turan leaves Orem with a clear destination in mind. Still, he does not rush. He travels carefully through the wilderness, hunting monsters along the way and gathering enough meat to survive. As he moves deeper into the forest, he suddenly hears something strange. At first, it sounds like a normal beast. But when Turan looks closer, he sees something unexpected. A saddled horse is running wildly through the woods. It is not attacking anyone. It is trying to protect someone. Nearby, a group of monsters is attacking travelers. Among them are dark elves. Turan quickly realizes the truth. These are not ordinary raiders. They are cannibals. The people they killed were not robbed for money. They were taken as food. Turan decides to act. Using stealth, he slips into the fight without being seen. He strikes first and kills one of the dark elves in a single blow. The others freeze in shock. At once, they call back their summoned beasts. One of them is a white, horned shadow beast that circles its master like a guard. Another is a massive green beast with horns. Turan fires a mana-coated stone at high speed, but the shot slams into the horn of the white beast, protecting the dark elf. The dark elf shouts, asking who attacked. Then he orders the green beast to charge in the direction the stone came from, but the beast only hits a tree. That is when the dark elf realizes the enemy is using stealth. So he summons a fox-like creature with the ability to detect mana. The fox quickly finds Turan. At once, the dark elf orders both beasts to kill him. Turan closes his hand and forms balls of fire. He launches them at the beasts, but the green beast takes the flames head-on and keeps coming. Turan barely dodges and thinks to himself that they are fast. He is only alive because he already took one enemy out before the real fight began. Then the fox bites Turan on the back of his ankle. At the same moment, the green beast attacks again. This time, Turan cannot dodge. The blow sends him flying into a tree. He coughs up blood from the impact. The dark elf laughs. He mocks Turan for killing his companion and says he will make him beg to die. But then the horse charges in. It stomps the dark elf in the face and knocks him to the ground. Panicking, he screams for his beasts to help him. The beasts turn on the horse at once. Even the white-horned guard beast joins the attack. That gives Turan the opening he needs. He fires another mana stone. This one flies straight into the dark elf's head. The shot tears through him and kills him instantly. Turan survives the fight, but only with the horse's help. He is hurt, but not critically. As he catches his breath, he admits that attack took a lot out of him. The red horse walks over to him. Turan thanks it. The scene then shifts to night. The man the horse was protecting finally wakes up by the campfire. He is startled to see Turan sitting across from him. He quickly asks who Turan is. Turan calmly explains that he saw him being attacked by dark elves, so he stepped in and saved him. At that moment, the horse comes closer. The man introduces it to Turan. Its name is Tilly. Turan praises the horse at once. He says Tilly is a very good horse. It not only understood that it had to protect its master, but also realized it needed to move him somewhere safer. The man then thanks Turan for saving him. He introduces himself as Aziz of House Berg. Turan gives his own name in return. After that, Turan asks what has been bothering him. Why did Aziz enter Dark Elf territory so carelessly? Aziz says there was no grand reason. He was traveling on a pilgrimage with his attendants. But along the way, they wandered into danger without noticing. He says he had only heard rumors that other races were savage. Even then, he never expected things to become this terrible. As he talks, Aziz breaks down in tears. He apologizes and says the people who died were very precious to him. Turan asks if they were his family. Aziz says no. They were the knights and servants who came with him. They had practically raised him since he was little. Hearing that, Turan realizes Aziz is a genuinely good person. Then Turan asks how many dark elves attacked him. Aziz says there were 2. Turan replies that should be all of them. To be certain, he activates search. After checking the area, he confirms there are no more dark elves nearby. Aziz is surprised by that ability. He says Turan really appeared at the perfect time. Turan answers that he also has business of his own. Aziz studies him more closely after that. He wonders if Turan might be the child of some great house. Turan says that is difficult to explain. He also downplays his strength. He says he only managed to ambush one enemy and take him down first. After that, he barely survived because of the Red Horse's help. Even so, Turan notices something important. Aziz's mana is powerful. It feels aggressive and dense. Turan realizes that if he had not absorbed the Dark Elves' mana earlier, he might actually have been weaker than Aziz. That leads him to another thought. Mana alone does not decide a fight. Even someone with less mana can win with better skill, timing, and judgment. After some time, Aziz makes an offer. If Turan does not already have a fixed destination, he wants to invite him to House Berg. He says this will be his repayment for saving his life and escorting him safely. When Turan asks what he means, Aziz proudly explains his background. House Berg belongs to the Enchanters. They are vassals of Arabion, the great house of the north. Their bloodline has crafted magical tools for generations. Then Aziz looks at Turan seriously and makes a promise. He says he will create the finest magic tool worthy of him.